This is Turn 1 Thoughtseize. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Ari.
And this is episode 105, Modern Horizon Picks, Tips, and Tricks. This set is unbelievably deep. Since its release, I have been scouring the entirety of its breadth and width, and I still don't feel like I have a completely solid handle on all of the stuff that's going on.
Don't worry. That's what everyone else is for.
Well, I hope so. Yeah, I just even now I'm just like scrolling through and I'm like, oh, we forgot to talk about this. We forgot to talk about that. We forgot to talk about this. And this is already like, spoiler alert, like strap in because this is going to be a long one.
There's a lot of stuff.
There's so much stuff. But let us indeed get right to it. Housekeeping. Deck Builder affiliate link, https://store.decked builder.com/T, the number one Thoughtseize. They have been ultra supportive, good folks all around. They were very quick with the Modern Horizons database update, which also included some weirdness because there had never been something that had snow mana in the casting cost before. So there was like tweaks involved, but they did it. It came out. It's great. Definitely support them if you are so inclined, because they support us and they've been very good to us over the years. Patreon still going. Patreon.com/turn1thoughtseize all spelled out. And welcome to our new patrons, Carl, Michael, and Douglas. Carl Michael Douglas, which could be someone's name, and Michael Douglas, which actually is someone's name. It's three separate people, to my knowledge.
And definitely not Douglas Michael Carl.
No.
Okay.
I think that would be less likely, but I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it could just be the same person 3 times in various disguises.
It could just be the same 3 children stacked in the same trench coat rotating.
Yes. Yeah, like Muppet Babies caper style.
Exactly.
Sometimes Kermit's on the top, sometimes Fozzie's on the top. It was a great show. Miss it. Metagame. Oh boy. There's so much stuff happening. Humans is still really good. Humans, I would argue, is probably the best deck by a decent margin. Like not an insane margin, not like I don't have humans so I shouldn't play, but if I was going into a completely dark event, it would probably be my first choice.
It's my current fallback choice in the format whenever I feel like I'm not super excited with what I can just play this stock humans list that hasn't changed for like a month. You know, once the deck added Deputy of Detention, it just became really good. Having additional answers is really, really important. I'm a fan of it main deck, but even just sideboard changes the deck significantly.
Yeah, I've liked the list I saw recently. We're running, I think, 2 in the main, and yep. I thought that felt. I haven't played it. To the casual observer, it looks like a strong configuration. Blue-white control is also in a very good place right now. Probably better than it has ever been. This is my off-the-cuff assessment. There was 4 of them in top 16 at the last big event and 3 in the top 8. The Magic Online something.
Was it a PTQ this last weekend?
It was.
Yeah. I know it won the Memorial Day PTQ, defeating a deck that we won't talk about in the finals. Or maybe we'll talk about it later. And it was the MTGO MCQ. Yes, okay, because there was that and a challenge this weekend, so I wasn't sure which one it was. Blue-white's really good. I was testing a list from Matt Ferrando, who top-aided the MCQ at Grand Prix Providence with a really innovative list that utilizes Disrupting Shoal and has a commandeer in it. There's actually, I think if you dig through Gabe Nassif's Twitch archives, a video of him surgical extracting me in the blue-white mirror, which is now a completely messed up matchup because of all of these new planeswalkers from War of the Spark. Previously, it used to be like this really long positioning battle because there was Search for Azcanta on turn 2, but past that, nothing really broke the game open until the planeswalkers and they cost so much more. Jace, the Mind Sculptor, and Teferi cost so much more than a counterspell that, it just turned into this weird waiting game. And to put things in context, I played a game with Blue at a tournament in the Mirror where I decked my opponent in game 1 because they cast too many Ancestral Vision. And then we went to game 2 with 3 minutes on the clock. And now it's just like, well, someone's going to be on the play and they're going to have a Narset or a Teferi, and they're going to play it on turn 3. If you don't have the counterspell, you lose. So the Disrupting Shoal is good at breaking that paradigm, but it doesn't matter too much because Narset and Teferi Time Raveler are just so good at what they do. Both of the static abilities are super relevant in Modern. Every time you cast Teferi, you just find a new thing it stops. The latest one I found was Shelldock Isle. My mill opponent just tapped an island, tapped the Shelldock Isle, and then conceded the game. Yeah, Narset just stops so many things, and everyone is just I'm gonna put some card in their deck to just mess with it. I had Gyre Reach Sanitarium in my deck. That's the land. It's a legendary land from Eldritch Moon. It taps for a colorless. You can pay 2 and tap it, and each player draws a card, then discards a card. So if you activate it during their draw step and you control a Narset, they don't draw a card, and then they discard the card they drew, and everyone has fun. People are playing Teferi's Puzzle Box, which is a 4-mana artifact with, at the beginning of each player's draw step, so which is after the draw, they put their hand on the bottom of their deck and then draw that many cards, which in this case with Narset is nothing. You get nothing. So it just locks them out of their hand. There's also Days Undoing, so you can, it's the 2 and a blue sorcery, everyone shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, draw 7, which in Narset's case is 1, because you cast Days Undoing on your turn, or maybe you cast it on their turn because you have Teferi too. Who knows? Yeah. And then it ends the turn if it's your turn. But, well, if it's your turn and then they have 1 card, it's pretty lopsided.
Yes, I think lopsided is very likely the most accurate adjective for Teferi Time Raveler and Narset Parter of Veils.
Yes.
There was some chatter in the beginning. People were like, oh, this 3-mana Teferi is a sideboard card. That is a completely incorrect evaluation of this ridiculously powerful card.
I'll admit to being on the wrong side of that one. I'm like, so why are we main decking Defense Grid? And then, then why are we not main decking Defense Grid?
Right, yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's...
You can't have any instant speed interaction. The place that I ran up against it actually earlier today was somebody was playing 4-color Saheeli, which, as we discussed earlier, I don't think should be a felony, but should definitely be a misdemeanor. And so I was sitting there and I was like, okay, well, I can beat this deck. Because for the first little while, they were just doing nothing. And I couldn't figure out what the deck was, because they were Stomping Ground, Birds of Paradise. And I was like, okay, sure. And then they were fetch Breeding Pool. And I was like, what year is it? What is even happening right now? And so I was expecting, I don't even know, Geist of St. Traft, Tribal Flames, something. And then they played Teferi, and I was like, okay, maybe it's some control deck. And then they're like, oh, Felidar Guardian Saheeli. And I was like, why can't I do anything to stop? Oh, I can't do anything to stop this.
Click, click. Why is it not working? Click, click.
Yes. And then in game 2, I wisely had brought my Torpor Orb. And so turn 2 Torpor Orb. And I was like, okay, now all I need to do is just dig for my Sorcerer's Spyglass with my multiple Ancient Stirrings, and I'm definitely going to get there. And I didn't get there. And so they just played Teferi. And I was like, okay. And I was expecting them to immediately bounce the Torpor Orb, but they just waited wisely. And then 3 turns later, they were just okay, hit all my land drops, play my cantrips, blah, 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 blah. And then Disdainful Stroke my Kieran, and I was like, rude. And then, because I didn't have Cavern, it's my own fault. And then they're like, oh, fill out a Guardian Saheeli. And I'm like, they didn't have the worst part is, they had an Oath of Nissa on the field, which is the only way that they were able to cast the Saheeli. And I had a Crozen Grip in my hand, and I was furiously clicking on said Crozen Grip, and nothing was happening. I was just like,
what does the text split second even mean?
And so what it means is literally nothing. It means you cannot win this game. So I guess if you want to play that deck, definitely play this card in it, because it means your opponent can never win the game.
I'd also like to mention Ashiok Dream Render as a sideboard card. The effect of like players can't search libraries, or the one-sided version of it, has been kind of it's just been overcosted in Modern, or it's been stapled to Leon and Arbiter, which has all of its own issues. And this is like the first time it's just been on a card and it just like hard says no. And I think that card deserves a look as a sideboard card. I'm remembering this as I look at a Jeskai Saheeli list with that card, for the record.
Yep. It's a really good card. There's later we'll talk about one of our patrons graciously does like a bunch of number crunching every quarter, and just came out with his little summary. So we'll talk about that. But Ashiok was actually one of the cards that was adopted like most, beside Karn the Great Creator, obviously, because why wouldn't you just play a hard lock? But yeah, lots of blue-white control. Allosaurus Rider combo came in second, and
it top 8. It came in second the PTQ on Memorial Day, and this last weekend it also top 8'd, because I made a joke about the harbingers of the apocalypse are the fact that Eldrazi Tron, Mono Blue Merfolk, and Neoform were back to back in the top 8 standings.
Yep.
Yeah. That deck, well, we're getting the London Mulligan, so it's going to be a mess. I every time I think about this, I look up the ban restricted dates, and let's see, when's the next one?
I don't think it happens on the next one, because Core 2020 and by extension the London Mulligan happens next month. And the next one isn't until 2 months after that. So my suspicion is that they're going to let it sit for that cycle. And then I think the next one, so it'll be 5 months from now. Can I add a but, though? Sure.
But this next announcement takes place before the Pro Tour, where they'd have to show everyone dying on turn 1. So there's a chance it survives, but I'm skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess if I had to pay with blood, and they had to, for some reason, take away Celestial Kieran in order to get rid of this deck, I would make that sacrifice. And I looked at it in my phone today. I was going through like a bunch of old deck lists because I was looking for something, and I found the very first version of the Kieran deck that I made, because it's in the list right after the like original Urnam-Geddon list that I pulled to like template it off of, was 45 days ago. So I've now spent a month and a half on this deck almost exclusively, and if it went away tomorrow but Neoform combo didn't exist, I would be totally fine with it.
Think of how many lands destroyed that is, even. 45 days. It's Are we approaching 4 digits? Probably. People don't have that many lands in Modern to destroy.
No, I think I would probably measure its success in tears and rage quits. And I don't always get to see the tears, but I always get to see the rage quits, and they get more satisfying every single time.
Destroying all your opponent's lands does not get old. I keep playing Restore Balance like every 3 months, like clockwork, just to do it.
Yep. Yeah, you're just like, boop. Look at that.
Yeah. To segue into the last relevant meta point was SCG Louisville was won by Dredge. So you had said that that's good again. I would like to say that anytime anyone says Dredge is good again, Dredge is not good again immediately. And
right, yeah.
And it's always 2 weeks after people say Dredge is bad is when Dredge is actually good. Because that's when people start doing stuff like cutting their main deck surgical extractions for gut shots.
Yeah, or just like leaving out cages.
Yes.
Or whatever. Like whatever the hate, the actual like hard hate is. People are like, oh, I haven't seen Dredge in a minute. So that's when you think that as a player, you should go, maybe I should play Dredge this week.
Well, also, people hadn't quite adjusted to the fact that the humans Dredge matchup took another flip. So people discovered Auriok Champion, and Auriok Champion being copied by Phantasmal Image just beat Dredge because they would be unable to deal lethal damage over the course of a game.
Right.
But then Blaststone kind of just scraps that entire idea because it will just destroy all of the Auriok Champions forever.
Right.
But like the blue-white decks, they were previously on like main deck surgicals and like rest in peace, and there's less of that floating around. There's actually, looking at these decks from that top 8, there's a fair amount of 8, though I guess the Titan Shift deck didn't have Relic in its deck, which is kind of weird to me, or at least in the main deck. Yeah, so I guess it's like a mix of everything. Yeah, the Phoenix deck didn't have, it had got shot over surgical, like I said. So
yep.
The 1 week everyone decides that they don't want to play against Dredge, and it's just not going to happen to them. It happens to them.
Yep, got him. Yes, that all happened. So
and none of it matters anymore because there's an entire new set of cards. Right?
Oh my God. There's so many cards in this set. It feels like there's 500 cards in this set, and I've sliced it and diced it like every single possible way I could think of. I cut it into colors, I cut it into tribes, I cut it into rarities, I cut it into keywords, and like there's still just so much stuff that like I know I'm missing stuff. To that end, we had to sort of narrow focus a little bit, or actually quite a bit, because we could do an entire set review and talk about every card and probably have something to say about all of them. But so we narrowed it down to categories, and we're just going to talk about a couple cards each per category. So we wanted to talk about some nostalgia cards, some reprints, the top competitive cards, aside from the Horizon Canopy lands, because like obviously, right, lands that you can tap for mana and cycle for a card are really good.
I think those are just likely to end up as the top 5 cards from the set. I don't know if it's really interesting to talk about them individually. It's just, they're there. People will play them, and people will draw cards off their lands.
Yes, I would expect them in most decks that play them that are not pure like creature combo decks or like super aggro decks. Like Bogles plays 4 Horizon Canopies, Humans plays 4 Horizon Canopies, and they do that because they don't have any other card draw. And I don't know that the other decks that have access to these color pairs are going to do that, but I don't know. I've been wrong before. Who knows?
I expect a lot of decks to be playing a lot of these, but it's not literally every deck.
Right. And then most likely vintage, there's like superlatives. Like this is the yearbook, the Modern Horizons yearbook. Maybe that's what we'll call the episode. So most likely to see play in Vintage and Legacy. Cards that we're most excited for that are actually going to see play, like cards that are definitely going to see play. The cards that we're most excited about that are like long shots, but like we're moldering. We're putting all of our molder energy into wanting to believe that these cards that we really like are actually gonna hit. And then we're going to do a rundown kind of by archetype, and then talk about some new archetypes or new theoretical archetypes. And then wrap it up. But
only then.
Oh yeah, only then. And like I said, there's I think all told we're probably going to talk about like 30-ish cards, and there's 220 other cards, not including snowlands, that are probably have equal, maybe not equal potential, but are just really, really something.
Yeah, you could just spin the wheel. I could even talk about snowlands for a while, because these new arts are not doing it for me. I had a similar feeling. They are fine in terms of like, I think Titus did a good job on them. I think they are well painted. I will probably just use the Cold Snap ones. If you black and white scaled all of these and put them in front of me, I could not tell you which was which for the most part. That's my thing about those. My 5-second rant.
That is a fair criticism.
I think if the snow-covered swamp was black and white, I would say it was the plains. The forest I would get, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yep. No, I will give you that.
Okay, should we get kicked off
agreed.
With this first category of the nostalgia bombs from this set that is about, 15% reprints? So there's a lot of opportunities, but not a ton, but also baked into a lot of these cards. Time Spiral style is a little bit of interesting stuff.
Yes, so including the lands and Flusterstorm, which kind of counts, there are 46 total cards that are reprinted from other sets. So approximately 20, a little less than 20%.
Yeah.
18%, something like that.
Yeah.
All right, what was your first one?
So this is probably my number one. We each have two for this one because it's a fairly fluid category. My two are both from the same era, which is late 2000s Legacy, which was an interesting format. A lot of these cards, when they were printed the first time, I don't know if I had like the same deep dive level. Like I was playing in competitive Magic, but like not like, a lot of copy pasting deck lists and stuff like that, not deep diving into building a bunch of random stuff that was kind of good. And Reckless Charge lives in that kind of good area in like these legacy Fireblast Zoo decks around when Wild Nikotl was first printed. And it was actually just kind of awesome. And like the raw damage output on this card is pretty good. It looks like it's 1 mana for 3 damage, but it's really like 1 mana for like 6 damage because you're giving a 3/3 haste and then it flashes back. So there's just a lot packed into that singular card, and I really just want to see people do the same kinds of things that they did with it before in Modern now, because those things are kind of fun. It's like the just in terms of like Goldfish decks, if you're like playing Wild Nikotl, I think you are in the fun category of Goldfish decks.
All right, here we go. I managed to find a Reckless Charge Zoo deck from 2011.
People still played it.
Yeah, Reckless Charge, Chain Lightning, Wild Nikotl, Tarmogoyf, Steplinks, Pride Mage. It's like medium Zoo.
Well, we didn't have better things than medium back then, okay?
Fair. I meant medium size, not medium quality.
I guess to be fair, the big debate was Pride Mage versus Goblin Guide in that era. So it was it was like Burn, but we didn't. Again, Burn didn't have nice things like Monastery Swiftspear, so
sure
you couldn't.
Oh,
Yeah.
Here we go. '07.
Ooh.
Grim Lavamancer, Curd Ape, Mog Fanatic, Quirion Dryad, Tarmogoyf.
This is before Wild Nicottle. Oh boy.
Chain Lightning, Fire Blast, Lava Dart.
Another reprint.
Put a pin in that one because we're coming back to Lava Dart. Bolt, Reckless Charge, Seal of Fire. Got to power up those Tarmogoyfs. Sideboard, Tight. 4 Hidden Gibbons. 4 Price of Progress. 4 Tin Street Hooligan. 3 Tormod's Crypt. End of list.
The advanced tech was just starting the Price of Progress because it wasn't getting any better than that. I know Hidden Gibbons becomes a creature. I think it's the one that becomes a 4/4, and I don't even want to figure out what it does. It's fine.
Yep, that's it. No, it's a single green, and whenever an opponent casts a spell, if it's an enchantment, it becomes a 4/4 ape.
Well then.
There are
Instant
no
or
other
interrupt
ape
spell.
Yes, there are no other ape synergies that I was able to divine from the rest of this.
Well,
but you very definitely this was a legal deck at the time. Oh, this was in Japan.
Yeah.
3 color Sly with 3 Blood Knights. I want to play this deck.
There was some good stuff.
Oh my god, Goblin Tinkerer?
You
I've
can
never
now.
even heard of that card.
Oh, Goblin Tinkerer. This is the story of why you need a 4-year degree to work with artifacts. You see, Goblin Engineer gets them back from your graveyard and finds them, and Goblin Tinkerer just blows himself and the artifact up.
Nice.
What was your first nostalgia card here? We got... Ooh, this is a good one.
Oh, yeah, Crows and Tusker. Oh, baby. Okay, hold on. I gotta bookmark this 2007 tournament because I gotta come back to that. I have a lot of fondness for Blood Knight because one time on a lark I was looking up old Pro Tour decks. Ooh. And I found like an old Ralph Levy mono red deck from like PT Time Spiral or something like that. And it was just like Blood Knight, Sulfur Elemental, Fortune Thief, like shenanigans, right? Like, and so I was like, I'm going to put this deck together. And I remember specifically that I didn't buy all of the cards for it because it had serrated arrows in the sideboard, and serrated arrows on Magic Online is expensive because of Pauper.
Because it was a common something.
Yeah. And so that was the like 3 copies of serrated arrows was more than the entire deck. So I was like, okay, I'll just leave out the serrated arrows and I'll play everything else. I load the thing up, and the very first match that I play is against Death and Taxes. And so I'm just like, Blood Knight, go. And they're just like, I don't know what I can do. I don't know how to win this game. And then I was just like, Sulfur Elemental, get wrecked. And they're just like, all right, fine, whatever. I can't, like, literally can't win the game from there. So that was my Blood Knight story. Anyways, Crows and Tusker is a card that I remember from when I was a kid, and this was an art that I remember very vividly from Onslaught.
Yep.
And it's an old Kev Walker piece, and it's a giant angry pig monster. It has all the Timmy hallmarks. It is 7 mana, 5 green. It's a 6/5, basically impossible to beat, and still does some other stuff. And at the time, this came out in 2002. I was 12. Didn't really have a deep understanding of like what the text was, but is actually a really interesting card that later we fairly recently got like a plays-alike in Sheffet Monitor. That's kind of the same thing. So 5 green for a 6/5. It got errated to be a boar beast as pictured. It is a pig
It's a board beast now? They added a type? Oh my gosh.
They did.
I'm so glad they kept the art on this card.
Yeah, same. But it's cycling for 2 and a green, and when you cycle it, you search your library for a basic land, and then you draw the card. Yep. So it's just like a utility creature that also looks cool, that is gigantic, and like would appeal to a 12-year-old that was also playing like Force of Nature and Lord of the Pit at the same time, which I was.
It was also just a good card. Let me see. I'm trying to remember if this card won Worlds. I'd have to look back. This is Worlds 2004. No, unfortunately, no Crows and Tuskers in the green-white Astral Slide deck. But that card was quite good, and I'm trying to remember the exact spots it was, but it saw constructed play at the time.
Yeah, apparently there was this must have been draft. No, it wasn't. It was a Block Pro Tour.
Oh, yes.
Venice 2003.
Yes. Okay.
Onslaught Block Constructed.
Yep. This is, I believe, Osip. I'm not going to pronounce his last name correctly on the first try. Ledivkowitz defeated Huey Jensen in the finals of this Pro Tour. And it was... the Block Constructed format was very weird, but the most notable thing from this top 8 was a explosive vegetation, like, dragon deck was, like, the hot thing from that tournament. But it did not win the tournament because Astral Slide is very good against creatures and also creatures. Right.
Yeah. Oh, Ravenous Baloth. I remember when that was a thing. So Crows and Tusker came in third. This top 8 of a 310 player event. Oh, wow. That's big. Even
for those days, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's huge. Anyways, so 310 players, Astral Slide, Goblins, Beasts. It just says Beasts all in caps, the name of the deck.
Yeah. Crows and Tusker has a pedigree. For sure.
It does. Wow. This is wild. Man, old Magic was so weird.
Yeah. This was...
And then Goblins with Click Slither. Yeah, buddy.
If you want weird, there's a card, Thoughtbound Primok, that made this top 8. 2 and a red for a 2/3 flying bird beast. At the beginning of your upkeep, if a player controls more wizards than any other player, they can gain control of Thoughtbound Primok. Notably, blue was unplayable, and therefore no one had a wizard. But yeah, that was magic. Or Menacing Ogre. I just need to read the words. When this enters the battlefield, each player secretly chooses a number. This was a card that was constructed playable. Yeah.
Wow.
Weird times.
Yep. Interesting.
Okay.
That's so funny. All right. So anyways, yeah. So people actually did play that card. It was a playable card. I was, like I said, I was of the mindset where like big creatures were unkillable. So I was in the like Crows and Tusker, Crows and Drover, Crows and Cloud Scraper school of Magic probably at the time. So whatever the biggest numbers were, that's where I wanted to be.
Spoilers for this limited format. I've tested a little bit of sealed, just using various, randomizer means, and Crows and Tusker is pretty close to unkillable in that format. So you will get to live out that dream if you play that format.
Excellent. Sold. What's your other one for this?
So my other one, again, a 2009 Legacy-ish staple, or well, I don't know staple, but card from that era is Rebuild. This is it's a card from Urza's Legacy originally. 2 and a blue, instant. Return all artifacts to their owner's hand, and it has cycling of 2. So notably, the purpose of this card is about exactly what you would think it would be today. It is Hurkyl's Recall, but sometimes you bounce your own artifacts for Storm Count, but also sometimes they have a Chalice of the Void in play, in a way that's like a Leyline of Sanctity style effect, so they can't be targeted and you can't bounce the chalice. And you got to get rid of that chalice somehow, so you have rebuild. And I believe the specific situation that I remember playing against with Storm was like a Sphere of Resistance, a chalice on 0, 1, and 2, and I don't remember what the other artifact was, but my opponent was just very sure they were going to win, and then they ghost quartered me, and I found my 5th basic land, and then I cast Rebuild, and then they died. The details from there on out are not interesting, but they no longer had any permanence, and therefore I could cast at least 10 spells.
So apparently this did have a deck. 2011, there was a legacy tournament somewhere in Germany, and somebody played Spiral Tide.
Ooh, yes.
Which is High Tide with Time Spiral, and it featured a single rebuild, I'm assuming, to save your candelabras. Because I can't imagine...
Well, you get to recycle your candelabras, right? You pick them back up and just use them again.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. And apparently everybody else was playing Tezzeret Affinity, so that card was super great.
Yeah, Legacy does weird stuff. We'll just kind of leave it at that.
Agreed. So, interesting. So my other one, also from a more innocent time, shall we say, back in Scourge. It is 1 and a white. It is an instant. You gain. It says it's at the time it said you can't be the target of spells or abilities this turn, and it has cycling too. So now it says you gain Shroud until end of turn. And at the time, based on my understanding of the game, this basically meant that it was impossible for me to lose the game from that point, because I couldn't be the target of anything. What are you even going to do? And I can cast it as an instant. Like 13-year-old me, mind blown.
Yeah, Gilded Light, this card is... Again, you've picked 2 cards that I am thinking about from Astral Slide from that era. And that card, again, was not in the Astral Slide deck I'm thinking about, but it definitely saw play so that block constructed Pro Tour you were looking at was before Scourge. So it saw play in Standard after Scourge came out, because that format featured mono black control with Mind Sludge, and it also featured a Mind's Desire Tendrils of Agony deck. And Gilded Light is pretty good against Tendrils of Agony. So
it is. That's a good point.
Yep. And then briefly before Arcbound Ravager took over the world, it saw play after rotation, because there were weird spots in Astral Slide mirrors involving things. The Astral Slide mirror before Arcbound Ravager took over is an entire topic that you can discuss, whether like Obliterate was the card you should be playing, or Fireball, or like Decree of Annihilation. So that's just kind of where the format was heading. Just Obliterates versus Brood Stars, and then Arcbound Ravager and Skullclamp happened.
I am just like, I'm trying to imagine like what the Scry magazine headline at the time was like. Like what is real? What even is life?
Yeah, it's very possible that we all should have just been playing Athog and Disciple of the Vault for months before that, but no. That we went into this world before entering the draw your deck with creatures world.
Yeah, before you're like, oh wait, I can just win the game?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I'll do that instead.
Okay.
Top competitive, as we said, minus the Horizon Canopy lands, because duh.
So,
Fire when ready.
Yeah.
Both red cards. Interesting.
Yeah, that is
interesting.
I have Goblin Engineer. There's just so many words on that card that are broken. It's like search your library for an artifact, and then put artifacts from your graveyard to battlefield. It's a 1 in a red, 1/2 Goblin Artificer. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for an artifact card and put that card in your graveyard. And then red, tap, sacrifice an artifact. Return target artifact card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this finds Ensnaring Bridge, Grafdigger's Cage, Damping Sphere as hate targets, Utrinosphere, Pithing Needle, Sorcerer's Spyglass, which it notably can flash in at instant speed. It recycles Tormod's Crypt. It finds halves of the Thopter sword combo, notably puts sword right in your graveyard so you can combo off. It finds, let's see, I had like a long list of ridiculous things. There's the Semblance Anvil deck. It's basically the follow-up to Krark Clan Ironworks, but the end game of that deck is it's the same Mirror Retriever style loop. So it finds like your Mirror Retriever to get back with your Scrap Trawler or other Mirror Retriever for the loop. Oh my gosh, what other things does this card find?
Well, that's the thing. It finds anything.
Yes.
And then there are resurrections that already exist in the format for artifacts that are very competitively costed because they only target artifacts.
Yeah, Trash for Treasure is the notable one.
Trash for Treasure is the cheapest one.
Yes. So the unfortunate part is there's not that many good like 9 mana artifacts. Like there's not even like an artifact that is close in power to like Iona, which is not even the best like creature you could reanimate. So I think the best thing you can Trash for Treasure is Bolas' Citadel and just go off. And that's what it was. You can find, if you put Lotus Bloom in your graveyard with this, you can then basically pay a red and sack an artifact to add 3 mana, which is just like a weird alternate mode of this card, of Goblin Engineer.
Okay. Yeah, because I was thinking, like, I was looking at, like, the giant end of artifact creatures, and I think Inkwell Leviathan was probably the one that I was like, okay, if I have this card, it is likely that I will win the game in relatively short order.
The 3 that I found were Inkwell Leviathan, Sundering Titan. So Inkwell's it's a 9 mana trample Island Walk Shroud, 7/11. Sundering Titan's a 7/10, and when it enters the battlefield or leaves the battlefield, it destroys a land of each basic land type. And then Possessed Portal, which is this is the second time in this calendar year, not even the last year, this calendar year, where I've considered playing this card in Modern. It's an 8 mana artifact. Players can't draw cards, and at the end of each turn, they sack a permanent or discard a card. Everybody. Just the end of each turn, each player does that. So stuff gets chewed up real fast.
Sure. Yep.
Yep, that's a card. If Fifth Dawn was a set, we can just go back to forgetting it existed.
Fifth Dawn was a thing. And of course, because it is 8 mana, it sees, I assume, extensive play in EDH, which is why it costs $6.
I don't actually know, because I'm used to seeing this card in context of Vintage, so...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't really know why it's there, but it is there.
But apparently, if you are in Europe, you can get it for 90 cents. So, I guess, check it out overseas. Import them for 90 cents. Look at this. Hashtag MTG Finance arbitrage opportunity. You can buy them in Europe for 90 cents and then buy list them here for $2.60. Boom. Free knowledge.
What great red card that involves the graveyard did you choose?
Seasoned Pyromancer. This card is a lot of text on a single card. So 1 red human, obviously. Shaman ? It's not super relevant, but I guess if you're living in a world where you want a cavern that will also cast, I guess Young Pyromancer is a bad example because he is also a human shaman. I guess there's a world that exists where you want to name shaman So you can cast Pyromancer, Seasoned Pyromancer, Young Pyromancer, Seasoned Pyromancer, and some other non-human shaman.
The single most powerful lord in Modern is a shaman in terms of damage output.
Oh, Rage Forger.
Yep. Puts a counter on each of your shamans that immediately does an extra damage per, and then they deal an extra damage on attack. So Rage Forger is just 3 mana +2/+2 all of your or +2 damage all of your shamans. So I've kept my eye on that. So shaman is a relevant card type. I don't know if this helps that deck, but it is a relevant card type.
Good to know. When Seasoned Pyromancer enters the battlefield, discard 2 cards, then draw 2 cards. The order is relevant because you're discarding the cards first. So if you were trying to do some graveyard related shenanigans, pun semi-intended, the cards are in your graveyard before the draw trigger, or like before the draw event happens. So then if there was a replacement effect on the cards that you discarded, you would be able to do it. Whereas if you drew the cards and then discarded them, you wouldn't be able to do that.
This also has Rixmati Reveler text where it doesn't condition you drawing cards on discarding cards. So if this is the last card in your hand, you just draw 2 cards.
Yeah. And then if you do discard cards, for each non-land card you discard as part of that first ability, you create a 1/1 red elemental creature token. So just baseline 3 mana 2/2, 2 relevant creature types with Faithless Looting on it, essentially. Like, great. And then also sometimes you just get 2 free 1/1s or even a free 1/1 and you're already like great. So like just that text, I would play that card all day. But wait, there's more. You can pay 3 red and exile it from your graveyard to create 2 1/1 red elemental creature tokens at instant speed.
That's instant speed? That's not sorcery speed? Did they just run out of words on the card? They couldn't put any more?
I don't know. But yeah, it is an instant speed activated ability.
Well then. Yeah, this card is definitely on the fair side of effects for Modern, but it does a lot of very good fair things. And by fair side of effects, I mean it costs 3 mana.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But so like obviously, Mardu Pyromancer, right? Like everything that this card does is stuff that I want to do in Mardu Pyromancer. And everything. This card does literally everything in multiple zones. So I'm super high on this card. I do not think this sees play in actual humans because they would just like Horizon Canopy. They have other ways of drawing cards that don't involve just like playing a 2/2
that are
for 3 mana
that are castable off Noble Hierarch mana.
Correct. Because they can't switch to Birds of Paradise, and double red, even with all the stuff, like double red is kind of ugly. So, not there. And they also can't, it would be impossible for them to activate the activated ability. So it's pointless, but plenty of other decks want this guy. And a handsome gentleman. Look at those abs. 1, 2, 3.5.
Is that just visible, like gender shifted Chandra on that?
I think it's grown up young Pyromancer.
Are the goggles just like how you know they're a Pyromancer?
Yes, okay. I believe that is the case.
So there's like Jaya's goggles that are like actually Jaya's goggles, but then there's also just
a bunch of copies.
I guess. I'm doing a quick lore dive on this. So I guess the card Jaya's Greeting features Jaya wearing different goggles that are not her goggles. And I want to know if Chandra's Pyrohelix from the last set shows Chandra with Jaya's goggles or whether she gave them back. This is, clearly important story points. Okay,
so yeah, the Jaya's Greeting goggles look like the sort of Inuit sunglass goggles, and the young pyromancer and seasoned pyromancer goggles look like
sunglasses.
Like quote unquote modern goggles, like Chandra's.
And Chandra's are like this halfway point where they got the slit in the middle. Okay, she still has them on Chandra Fire Artisan. So Jaya just got new glasses.
Yeah, like new old, or like Victor Adame just decided to draw old style, like old timey Inuit sunglasses on Jaya Ballard because she is an old timey kind of gal.
Yes, it's if you're gonna have one pair of glasses, you may as well have two. You could lose the first one.
Who knows? They could be transitions lenses, right? They're prescription.
Yes.
It's tough,
Okay. So next category is the most likely to show up in vintage or legacy. You want to kick this one off?
Yeah. So we're color pair matching. Like I picked red and green cards. You picked red and green cards.
I think that's kind of the case because they've made the blue cards mostly cost mana or be worse versions of cards that cost mana. So you've got to find the cards that are good and don't cost mana.
Yes, and green and red cards in vintage, spoiler alert, don't see a lot of play right now. So my first pick was Collector Oof. White green Stony Silence on a body. And
it's just one in green creature, 2/2 Oof creature.
Oh, he's 2/2, that's right.
And
yeah, he looks like a copy. He looks like a cross between like Spellwild Oof and Gritty, the hockey mascot guy.
This is the old Ice Age style for oofs. That the original brown oof. I was looking this up. So there's the Mirrodin oofs that are more wolf-like, but the Ice Age ones are just like kind of a little too goblin-y. So they just had to differentiate them the next time they printed them.
And then the Kitchen Finks, the Lorwyn ones.
Oh, I didn't even think about the Lorwyn ones.
Yeah, are also like more goblin-y, but troublesome.
Yeah, but the whole thing with Shadowmoor was that it was the evil versions of everything. So I wonder. See, again, now you've got me going down the lore rabbit hole. Were there oofs in Lorwyn?
They were. Well, actually, I'll tell you right now. Set.
I guess Gilderbairn's an oof. That one's kind of just a little cute doofus. Yeah, no, there were no oofs in Lorwyn.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, obviously, Vintage is a format with a lot of artifacts with activated abilities that all have the word Mox in their name. And one of the most powerful decks in Vintage is Paradoxical Outcome that relies on bouncing all of those. And another one of the most powerful decks in the format is Arcbound Ravager Workshop, which involves activating Arcbound Ravager and Walking Ballista. So that card is going to see a lot of play in that format. Also notable is there's been a Survival of the Fittest Vengevine deck that's been trending up lately. I don't know how it will do post-London Mulligan, but in the meantime, it looks really good. And it literally just... I pulled this up and I found the latest 5.0 list. It literally has Stony Silence in the main deck. There's just 3 Stony Silence in the main deck of this survival deck. And I assume that the Survival of the Fittest deck would want to play a creature Stony Silence if it could.
Yes, I would agree with that assessment. So as I'm digging through the history of oafs in Magic the Gathering, I found the brown oaf illustration from original Ice Age is just like the OG, like Collector Oaf is the 2019 version of that exact art.
Yep. Yeah, that is one of the cards I remember seeing when I first started playing was this exact brown oaf.
Yeah, and also Shelkin Brownie for some reason used to be a fairy but got errata during the creature change to be an oaf. And he's just like a fat dude in a tree.
I think that's a less distinctive art style.
It is, but it's weird also because it has the milk tie-in with Kitchen Finks.
Oh, what? I'm not gonna. That's too deep folklore for me to trace. Yeah.
So that actually is a real folklore thing from like superstitious Irish people from whom I partially descend.
Gotcha.
So that is definitely a real thing, is like leave food out, leave milk out.
Or
those are all things that my great grandmother probably would have done, and I maybe not my grandmother, but her mother almost definitely did things like that.
Otherwise, Santa Claus will come eat you in your presence in the night. Got it.
Check. So don't do that. And also, if you're just trying to play a Black Lotus, trying to play a fair Black Lotus, and somebody's like, "Narp."
All these decks still play Black Lotus. They're just like, I'm going to cast my Stony Silence after my Black Lotus. It's just going to 1-2. That's the sequencing.
Do they really?
Yeah, the Survival of the Fittest deck still plays 3 Moxes and a Black Lotus with 3 Stony Silence.
Yeah, like I guess you do.
Stony Silence in the follow-up Collector Roof is better on turn 1, so you may as well play your artifacts to play it that early.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. Like, with that much ramp, I don't know why you don't just play Karn the Great Creator, and really. I have to imagine that train is coming at some point, like
eventually. But 2 is so much less than 4. Like, to turn 1 make 4 mana, you need so many Moxes that you'd be throwing away. I guess not with Karn, but like you need a lot more stuff to do that. Whereas you literally just need a Mox and a land. And then you get to cast your Stony Silence or Oof or Null Rod.
Yep.
So carrying along this artifact hate theme, I have Force of Vigor as my most likely vintage card. Over the years, I've seen a lot of vintage decks play Pulverize, which is a different free artifact destruction spell. So Pulverize it has a mana cost. No one ever pays the mana cost. It's sacrifice 2 mountains, destroy all artifacts. So the Force of Vigor, which has a mana cost, which might be more payable. 2 green is much less than whatever the cost on Pulverize is. But
4 red.
Exiling a green card from your hand to destroy 2 artifacts. 2 is kind of the point where you turn the shop schemes around, because you like the first lock piece you can kind of play through, but it's always the second one that really punishes you for trying to do anything. So when you can kill 2 lock pieces or a lock piece and a threat, that's when you really start to break free of the stacks decks. So I think Force of Vigor is in a really nice spot for vintage. I don't like it in modern. I think it's a little too much. Maybe, when KCI was legal or a couple of years ago, it might have been necessary, but I don't like the free interaction in modern. But in vintage, because all the spells are free anyways, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Wow. Pulverize is a wild card. Holy crap.
Just got a giant pink elephant jumping around.
Is a giant pink elephant, lovingly rendered by Scott Fisher, 4 red. It is a sorcery. Sacrifice 2 mountains. Man, next level play. You can float mana from those mountains before you sacrifice them.
Yep. And then you destroy all their artifacts and then you win the game.
Amazing.
Yep.
That is a card that I did not know existed. I was not playing during Masks. And now that I have had the displeasure of drafting full Masks block, I am not sorry, because that draft format makes no sense.
Yeah,
literally, the cards make no sense. They don't make any sense together. And I took cards that I recognized. I was like, that's a blue pirate.
You did not miss
Done.
much. To put things in context, Mass was bookended by Yawgmoth's Bargain still being legal and being considered acceptable because so many other things were banned and they could not ban any more cards, and then bookended with a 2-mana 1/1 Merfolk, just with a random ability making the finals of the World Championship. So you did not miss a lot with Mass Block.
All right. Solid.
Okay.
My other card is Shenanigans. which is just a word that I use naturally a lot. So that's going to cause some confusion. I also do own a playset of the original card that had the word shenanigans on it, which is Boer Shenanigans from Lorwyn. In case you ever need a goblin tribal enchantment that pings stuff when goblins die. Oh, it's the Pashlik Mons ability, but on an enchantment. Interesting. Anywho, the actual card that will see play, Shenanigans, is 1 and a red for sorcery. Very simple. Destroy target artifact, and it has Dredge 1. And that is amazingly good because you can play this instead of Ancient Grudge and still play Grafdigger's Cage and still be able to blow up everybody's artifacts over and over and over again.
Yep. The thing artifact decks like the least is destroying multiple artifacts at once. Well, I think they just like Null Rod and Collector Oof a little more, but it's close.
Yeah, so I think, and even, like, I don't know, does this see modern play? I don't think there's enough graveyard hate that is, like, important to main deck that is symmetrical to get around with the Dredge. Like, I guess there are people that will play it, and it's a fine choice.
I think,
but it's largely interchangeable, I think, with most of the other stuff.
I think just finding the Ancient Grudge and getting, like, the free card of, like, it's just in your graveyard and using it is often going to be better, or having the 1-mana Nature's Claim that kills Leyline of the Void. So I doubt it sees much play. At most, it's a one-of.
Yeah.
So, I have selected a card that does not kill artifacts for my second card, which is shocking.
Unacceptable.
I have elected to choose a legacy card in Wrenn and 6. This is a red-green Planeswalker. Is the Planeswalker type Wrenn or 6? It's Wrenn?
It is Wrenn,
okay.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the tree or the person. So I'm just going to continue on with that.
Carry on. I'll look it up while you're explaining the card.
So it's red-green, so only 2 mana. It's the second ever 2-mana Planeswalker and is distinctly better than Tybalt. It starts at 3 loyalty. +1, return a land from your graveyard to your hand. -1, deal a damage to any target. And -7, you get an emblem that gives all of your instants and sorceries in your graveyard retrace, which is you can discard a land to cast them from your graveyard, paying their mana cost. So, notably, in Legacy, this will be returning Wasteland. And it'll be returning Wasteland, and that will be fun for no one, the same way that returning Wasteland with Life from the Loam is no fun, except for you get to draw a card for your turn, so you might just see this do even more stuff. A damage to any target isn't the most exciting in Legacy. It's more exciting in Modern, where it might pick up a Noble Hierarch or Champion of the Parish. But that emblem to give all your instants and sorceries retrace with Life from the Loam means that you get back 3 lands, and then you discard one of them to get back 3 lands, and then you discard one of them to get back 3 lands, and then from there you can probably retrace like a Lightning Bolt or something, and win the game pretty easily. So for only 2 mana, this card does a lot, and we were already talking about how much the 3 mana Planeswalkers just kind of skew Modern, and it's hard to imagine that having a 2 mana Planeswalker with a relevant effect is not comically game skewing.
All right, I have cracked the mystery of Wrenn and 6.
Fire away.
It is a mystery solved in 2 parts. Somebody actually just asked Mark Rosewater on his Tumblr which part is Wrenn and which part is 6. The answer, Wrenn is the Dryad, 6 is the Treefolk. Wrenn doesn't name them, so 6 is the 6th Treefolk she's had, which is part of the story, but without context, it makes no sense. The context is Wrenn is a Dryad Planeswalker who can symbiotically bind with and pilot a Treefolk. Her current host is her 6th. Wrenn does not name her symbiont, so he's simply known as 6. Usually, living organic matter can't be brought along with a Planeswalk. In this aspect, Wrenn breaks the rule in a way similar to Yangu planeswalking with Mowu, who is the dog from the international China deck thing who also got a card in War of the Spark.
Notably the giant beefy dog on the card in War of the Spark.
Yes. So there is no other information about this character. They were created for Modern Horizons, apparently.
Okay, so I'm glad that they addressed the how can you planeswalk with living matter issue more than they did with Mowu.
Yes.
Which the explanation is that Mowu is a magic dog. End of explanation.
I mean, a wizard did it is kind of the core of the game.
Well, this was like a whole plot point that set up the entire Nicol Bolas arc, and then they're just like, oh yeah, but magic dog. And it's like, oh, why didn't I think of that?
You can't have a dragon who has a dog. That doesn't make any sense.
You had to get the planner portal to like transport the Eternals, and it had to happen on Amonkhet because they had to be coded in Lazatat. Anyways, but if you could just magic dog them, then, that would have solved that whole issue, and you could just skip 2 entire blocks.
Right. It's not, don't even worry about it. You know what? Rewind the whole like cons thing. We can just like leave Sarkin crazy. Ugin doesn't need to come back. Like everything will be fine. We'll just get a bunch of dogs and it's fine.
That's clearly the solution. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, Renin 6 Returning Wasteland that's about as far as I got with the card, is that you're going to do that, and most of the other things it does are just kind of incidental. You're going to destroy all of your opponent's lands, and it's going to be great or horrible.
Yeah, it's so like this is one of the Loam utility pieces, of which there's like 15 or 20 in this set.
Well, the problem is that you can only put 15 or 20 spells into your Loam deck, like not uniquely named, like individual spells.
Right. Like the notable stuff that I take away from this card is it's 2 mana and it comes in with 3 loyalty and has a +1. So it's 2 mana that doesn't die to lightning bolt if you tick it up.
Yep.
The -1 is like, it's not 0. So like occasionally you will just play this on 2 and kill a Noble Hierarch.
Delver
and then
Secrets.
Still have a Planeswalker.
Does kill Delver.
So like that's a thing. Yeah, in Legacy you will kill a non-zero number of Delvers with this.
The entire Death and Taxes deck.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, on turn 3 you can take care of that pesky Thalia.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, just the land, recycling the lands for Loam, just for cycling and then recycling. Get it? It's compost.
No, that's a card from Urza's Destiny.
I bet it is. I'm sure it is.
Okay, so the next category is the most excited about, but card that definitely sees play. So this is something that we believe is exciting, interesting, and is going to see modern play. And I had listed off Eldamri's Call. We have gotten a lot of different tutors recently, but I think being instant speed and letting you split up the payment is really good. Basically, like the finale of Devastation, if you want to find something, you're going to have to pay. Like if you need to find your Devoted Druid, because all of these are just going to find Devoted Druid, let's be real. You have to pay 2 and then 2 more, so it's 4 there. And like, yeah, if you're finding Vizier, then that's great because you can tap the Devoted Druid for it. But if you have to find the actual starter half of your combo, Eldamri's Call is better because it's just going to set it up so that you can pay now and then again later. People have talked about Summoner's Pact being better, but I think that there's times where you need to have an untap step, or you need to find a creature. Like this finds Vizier of Remedies and Devoted Druid, and Summoner's Pact does not find both of those because one of those is not green, it's white.
Right.
So really, it's just Devoted Druid is making this card guaranteed good. But like finding a creature at instant speed is just search your library for a thing at a reasonable rate has always been powerful, and this card is just right at this point where it's just like, yep, this is what I expect to pay for this, and yeah, searching my library for a thing is good.
Yeah, I have many projected homes. I know obviously it's going to see a lot of play. I think this is probably the thing that takes Court of Calling to like a 2 of maybe, and it was already kind of on the ropes because it's just even with Convoke, the like 3 mana or 3 permanent investment just to get it started was starting to get a little hefty for Modern. So yeah, this is a good slot in for me. Obviously, like I'm going to use this to fetch Ugin's Conjurance.
Yep.
And then immediately cast them for 0. So for me personally, this works out amazing.
Yeah.
And basically lets me cut the Karn Scion of Urza's that I was running because that was just more like card draw. And now between the Incubations and the Ancient Stirrings and like Ranger Vios maybe even is now on the chopping block in favor of this. I'm 50-50 on that because getting 2 of them is great.
Well,
and having a body is also great.
It finds the Kira in half too. Like that is so good, and it finds it in such a way that you don't have to pay, like I said, 6 mana up front for it. It's just like, well, I'll pay 2 mana now and 4 later, and then that's it.
Got him. And then post board, right? The other thing is, I really need to have like Gaddock Teague in relatively short order, oftentimes to like beat a number of decks. So this being 2 extra copies of Gaddock Teague is amazing. So I'm super excited about this card. I think selfishly and also it's just going to see a lot of general toolbox play because it's a better tool for your toolbox.
Yeah.
Mine is Plague Engineer. Man, if you've ever played Legacy, you know that Engineered Plague is a super important card to the format. We have had some things along those lines, like Illness in the Ranks is kind of like in that area, but only for tokens. Plague Engineer is 2 and a black for a creature carrier. Nice throwback.
Yes, I agree on that.
It has Death Touch, which is gravy, and when it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures of the chosen type your opponents control get -1/-1. That's another like interesting thing. I think doesn't Engineered Plague?
It's both.
Everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what this came up with, but it was a very common interaction at one point where you would name like Elf or Goblin, and one of the decks just had Elf or Goblin. It was Elf, and the black-green decks had Llanowar Elf. So
the old version was all creatures. This version is just creatures your opponents control. So relevant, potentially relevant, because it allows you to run this in like a deck that would also run Birds of Paradise or Noble Hierarch or something like that, and not ice your own guys.
We've been talking about Devoted Druid decks. Devoted Druid is an elf. If it has to put a counter on itself, it would die to this.
Yep.
This would not do that if it's one-sided. Wait, it is. Also, it's just a Death Touch. So, like, having Death Touch on this 2/2 is so relevant because the issue with so many of these, at least the past issue, I don't know how much it applies to Modern anymore, but the issue has always been that, like, you would find your target, you'd be like, yeah, but then you draw your target against, like, Jonded, you'd be like, why is this 2 mana 2/2 in my deck? And, like, at least this trades for, Death Shadow or Tarmogoyf or something.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of decks that would play this that, like, have trouble dealing with a Gurmag Angler.
Yep.
So I'm very excited with the card. I think it's well designed, and it has just a lot of functionality that we had been missing. Also, another way to kill a lot of humans, which is great.
Yeah, like all of that deck, that entire deck is all 1/1s. Even the things that aren't 1/1s are 1/1s that grow. So if you land a Plague Engineer against humans, their options are really constrained. There are just other decks in Modern. Just picking off, like we were saying, like we talked about Seasoned Pyromancer, just clearing the elementals. Just the fact that this card can kind of chip shot these small interactions is really important.
All right, so now we have the cards that we are most excited about, that we are Journey style, never going to stop believing. We can't stop. Don't stop believing that these cards are going to happen, even though deep down in our heart of hearts, we understand that they are what they are, and we love them anyways.
Yeah. Do you want to lead off here?
Sure. Mob is a very weird card. And the reason that I think it is weird is because it reminds me of Snuff Out. Snuff Out is a semi-staple in Legacy. I guess it sees more play now with Death Shadow. Yes,
it's in and out depending on how many people decide they want to be on the Death Shadow Gurmag Angler plan. Because Snuff Out destroys, it's you 3 and a black to cast, or pay 4 life if you control a swamp, and destroys a non-black creature. The problem is that it's like a victim of its own success. Like, if a bunch of people play the decks that want Snuff Out, then you're playing against other decks that don't have things that you can kill with Snuff Out.
Right.
It looks like right now that card is mostly in Black-Red Reanimator, interestingly.
Huh. Okay.
But yeah, Mob is obviously a completely different purpose.
Right. So Mob is 4 and a black for an instant. It has Convoke, and the text is just destroy target creature.
Yep.
The at common, interestingly. So the thing that really gets me about this card that I find interesting is you can pay 0 mana for this card. So like we had Murderous Cut, which is the same mana cost with Delve, and that used to see like kind of one of play occasionally. You don't really see it much anymore, or I haven't seen it recently. So the place that I am thinking of this immediately is in like black white tokens kind of thing, where I'm like playing Bitter Blossom, right? I want to be able to have something to do with the fairies that are summoning sick, the lingering souls that are summoning sick, and because the fairies can convoke for black, there is very likely scenarios in the sort of like mid-ish game, like early mid-game, where I can just fire this off for free.
Also, with Intangible Virtue, you can tap your things that attacked once they have Vigilance.
Even better. Yeah, I haven't played a dedicated build that was like deep enough to support Intangible Virtue, but that is a point well taken.
Yeah.
There's definitely that's even better.
Yeah.
I'm into that. Yeah, plus they're 2/2s. Everybody wins. Plus it also has like super creepy art and a very disturbing flavor text. Not all monsters fight with teeth and claws, and it's like a bunch of people getting ready to kill a werewolf with a hay bale pitchfork.
Yeah. I see where you're getting with this card, and I understand why it's also like kind of a bit of a out there dream to have it work.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a I will pull it off. I will be happy that I pulled it off, and then I'll just play Slaughter Pact instead.
That's accurate. So my card is Lightning Skelemental. This is red, black for a 6/1 trample haste. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice this. So it's ball lightning, but when it deals combat damage to a player, they discard 2 cards, so it's lightning. So this card is, I feel like it's really close in Modern. Just the value and damage, and I don't know what deck actually wants both of those at the same time is the problem. But this card is a Magic story/meme made cardboard. So back in the day, Cedric Phillips was playing in a PTQ in, I believe, Louisville, Kentucky. And his opponent plays a Meddling Mage, and they name Lightning. And next turn, Cedric plays a Lightning or a Ball Lightning. We're not very sure. And his opponent says, "That's the card I named." And there's a long judge call involving whether his opponent with a Kentucky accent said Blightning or Ball Lightning on the card that they named. And I don't know what the end result is, but I think the best way to end an ambiguous story is with an ambiguous ending. And that has just kind of been passed down through various methods, just popped up from time to time, and now it is literally a card. And I just want to see that happen.
All right. I mean, if we can get that guy, I think that's a noble goal, right? Like, we fly that guy out and just have him, like, play against Cedric in sealed, and just, like, make sure that he has one of these. Just, like, slip it to him.
Cedric just goes through his...
play this.
His old Planeswalker point history and maybe finds it out and then never admits it.
I like this card. It does, like, I've unironically played Ball Lightning recently, like within the past 6 months. I've like went to an event fully with the intention of like playing Burn with Ball Lightning, and then a friend ended up coming and he plays Burn, and I was like, hey man, I like play this, and he's like, is that Ball Lightning? And I was like, hell yeah, it's Ball Lightning. He's like, all right, in. Boom. Like, I'm playing this weekly with Ball Lightning. He did well. And obviously I like discarding cards. So there's a couple of like black-red control shells that run like Blood Moon, Pack Rat, Liliana, like that sort of constellation of controlling cards in those colors. And I think this guy definitely slots right into that deck. Turn 2 Pack Rat, turn 3 this guy, get him. Value.
Maybe
question mark.
Maybe black red rack is the next big thing, you know. This is your discard too.
Hey, I played that too. I've like there's so many, like, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in a minute, but the Pox has gotten a bunch of like interesting throwback / pickup, just interesting cards. Biggest archetype winners. As previously stated, there are a lot of cards in this set, and they go in a lot of different decks. However, there's a the way that I interpreted it is the rich got richer, and some people who never had anything now have something. So I don't know.
That's about right.
The middle class of Modern didn't really get a ton necessarily, but let me tell you, some pretty good humans in this set.
Yeah, well, I mean, for technical definitions of humans, Unsettled Mariner is a human. It does shut off. I think the specific one that it's good against is Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, and Scapeshift combo, because it's a blue-white 2/2 Shapeshifter Changeling, has every creature type, and whenever you are permanent you control becomes a target of a spell or ability, an opponent controls counter to that spell or ability unless that player pays 1. So each Valakut activation costs a mana now.
Right.
Yep.
So that's the ability clause, or the ability portion of the clause is the big thing.
Yeah.
So it is slightly worse than Kira in a different way, but it's just board protection from a spot removal from like just, and it's the fact that it's like, this used to be a minimum 3 mana to get an effect like this. Monastery Siege, Kira, you know, all that stuff was like three mana and up just to get in the door, and now it's 2 mana on a 2/2 body. And even though, like I said, even though it's technically a changeling, is human, and humans is the best deck. So why wouldn't you also play this?
Yeah,
and
how many you play, I'm not sure, but it's not a card that doesn't get better in multiples.
Right. Yeah, that's also important to note. Having 2 of these basically means your opponent is never going to kill anything of yours except with a sweeper.
Yes.
Yeah, I was a little surprised, to be honest, because this card is very strong. So the other one, and this is a subject of some debate, is Ranger Captain of Eos is the the more experienced version of Ranger of
Eos.
Ranger of Eos. He got upgraded. Same Falcon, upgraded mount. He now rides a Lion. So Ranger Captain of Eos is 1 white for a 3/3 human soldier, and when he enters the battlefield, you search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 1 or less. So instead of getting 2, you get 1, but he has an activated ability. Sacrifice Ranger Captain of Eos. Your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn. So instant speed, sacrifice, do this in your blue-white control opponent's draw step or their upkeep or whatever. And they don't get to play Magic for a turn.
You can respond to them revealing Terminus to a miracle trigger, and they can't cast it. Yep. This works against all the combo decks. So the real question here is whether finding a 1-drop is worth enough of a cardboard, like a unit of cardboard, that this replaces Militia Bugler doing that exact job. I don't have a good answer because the 1-drops in humans are they have diminishing returns over time. But at the same time, if you were to just cast this on turn 2 off a Noble Hierarch and you found a Champion of the Parish, that's still pretty reasonable.
Right, and I guess that is the thing, because right now, humans is running Militia Bugler in the side. It is running some number of Militia Bugler main and side, and I do not know enough about the deck to know why that is, but it looks like it's a 2 of ish, 1 to 2.
The sideboard Buglers just kind of do a lot. They're just kind of the card that smooths out the deck when you take out the cards you don't want. Like in Mirrors, they accumulate battlefield advantage, which is pretty important against the control decks and mid-range decks. They pile on. When you take out, if you don't want Reflector Mage in the matchup, this will find your Meddling Mages or whatever, or the reverse. So it's just kind of the right gap filler. It just happens that in game 1, you don't really want that.
All right, so I guess targets for Ranger Captain, notably Champion of the Parish, your main beater, and then Noble Hierarch, and that's it.
Well, if you have access to this, you could play a Giver of Runes or something similar, but there's not really a good 1-mana anti-combo card is the problem.
Right.
So that's the question here.
Yeah, I wonder if this is maybe becomes 2 Buglers and 1 of these, and I guess you could just run this in the main as an extra copy of Champion of the Parish and Noble Hierarch.
It depends if that sacrifice effect is a big deal.
Get it, yeah. I mean, if we're living in a world where blue-white control is the premier control deck, then I think yes, I think this is worth looking at. And probably worth playing some number of in the main. If it's, the control deck is whatever.
Golgari mid-range or something. It's a little dicey.
Yeah, some weird thing where you're just I'm going to dodge an Assassin's Trophy for a turn. That doesn't matter.
And even if their deck has a Languish or a Dead of Winter, they'll just be okay, I'll play Tarmogoyf. That doesn't really...
Yeah.
That doesn't really work.
You're not solving a problem.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
yeah.
For right now, for right this second, I would say yes. If it were me, I would probably play 1 in the main and then 2 Buglers on the side. That is whether or not that is strictly speaking correct, I don't know. But that's my gut.
Yeah, you got to try new cards at some point, right?
Yeah. And I mean, if you really want to try it, you play 2, I think, because there's not a ton of flex at the 3-mana slot.
No.
You're kind of you gotta run Mantis Rider, that's the reason to play the deck almost.
You got to run Reflector Mage, that's the other reason. Those
right.
are both just...
Yeah. So there's And then Deputy Detention, I think, is just has so much more general utility that it's he's got a lot of competition at that mana cost.
Yes, it's definitely a we'll see kind of thing.
Yeah, but try it and let us know.
Okay.
Burn. Okay. You had Horizon lands here, obviously.
Yeah.
Like the canopy. There's a red-white Horizon canopy now. Well, guess what? You know what Burn really wants? Cards. And you know what they don't care about? Lands.
Yep, it's pretty straightforward there. It's
seems like a match made in heaven.
Yeah, and it wants its first 2 lands, and then it never wants another land ever. So
right.
if you can sacrifice one and get a card that might not be a land, that's perfect. I think that people have been debating how many you play. I think the final answer is probably like 5 or 6.
Sure. Is there? All right, now I don't remember the color pairs now. Because if there's another one that has red in it, then you definitely play. Oh,
it's all the enemies. I don't think playing 8 is kind of. You have to play some. I don't actually. Do you even have to play fetches? Probably. I don't know. That's actually a good question. You could just play like all like Sacred Foundries and these and Inspiring Vantages. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole too far.
Yeah. Wow. You can play 8 of these. That is crazy. I mean, it's an experiment. I don't know. I have cut Horizon Canopies from decks before because the life loss is a real thing.
Yeah.
That said, I also play at least 2 Ramunap runes in Burn right now, and that has been both manageable and good. So
these have to be better, right? Because
yeah, I mean, have I killed someone with the Ramunap runes a non-zero number of times? Yes, I absolutely have. It's immensely satisfying, and I highly recommend it. However, you can just cash this land in for a card, and I guarantee that card will do somewhere between 2 and 4 points of damage.
And it costs 1 mana to cash that in as opposed to 4 for Ramunap runes? Yeah.
Correct. So, yeah, I guess I'm ready to drop those for this, which is also just randomly color fixing, too, like just for ha-has.
Yep.
Oh, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's,
they're very good in that deck.
Yeah, and not for this one. Did I even put Phoenix on there? No, I didn't.
I don't think that it's very good in that deck. You're so dependent on... You're already cashing in your lands with Faithless Looting and filtering them away with cantrips. So I don't think you're getting exceptionally far in the Phoenix deck with the... with these.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I was... sorry. In my head, I said Lava Dart, but I didn't say it out loud. And I was trying to... I didn't put Lava Dart on this list, but I have to imagine that a free spell, another free spell that does Phoenix ever want 8 gut shots? Because that's like kind of what it is.
Are you even playing gut shot if you get to play Lava Dart instead?
Yeah, I guess not. Maybe that's the thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Gut shot just goes away. You play Lava Dart instead. Huh. That's a question for somebody who's not me. But I will say that the functionally free the flashback that you don't have to pay mana for to get your Phoenixes back is definitely something that deck is interested in.
Also,
especially
just a really good pairing with Pyromancer Ascension. If you just have Lava Dart, like that's it. You have an Ascension.
Oh, that's gross. Well, and you can sacrifice the mountain that you use to cast the Lava Dart to flash it back. Yeah, that's a sneaky good card. All right, so there's a lot going on there. A lot of layers.
Yeah.
And not a lot of text, which is surprising. Like, this has a lot of implications.
Yeah. Huh. Lava Dart is a very real card.
Yeah. It's funny because I almost dismissed it. Because originally I looked at it and I was like, am I going to play worse Needle Drop? Like, no. Like, that's Pauper Burn, right? They play Needle Drop.
I think a lot of the people, like everyone who was like Lava Dart immediately was someone who played with Lava Dart when it was around in Judgment. And now is just like, yes, I know Lava Dart is good. Let me explain to everyone exactly why.
Got it.
Okay. Next deck up is Infect, which is just a 1-card upgrade, which is scale up. So I think that this doesn't answer a lot of the issues the deck has, but it does make the kill a little more consistent. It's green, target creature becomes a 6/4 until end of turn, and it's got an overload cost of 4 green, but you're never doing that. So really, it's just the fact that the creature keeps abilities, so if you cast this on a Blighted Agent, it becomes a 6/4, and then you play a Might of Old Crows or a Groundswell, and then it becomes a 10, and that's 10. If I can do math right, that's 10 Infect. And, that's it. So
that's the magic number.
People have debated how many of this to play because it's a sorcery, which is not ideal for this deck because you kind of want instants to get a little tricky with stuff and play around removal and not play into removal and all this fun stuff. But I think this card will just see play as a 2 to 3 of in that deck, possibly over some amount of Become Immense because drawing multiples of that card is problematic.
Yeah, however many Become Immense you're running, subtract all but one, replace them with Scale Up, and that's probably right.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I've played a fair amount of black-green Infect, and one of the things that I found oftentimes with that particular build, just because of the way the creature costs work out, the stuff in black-green is a little more resilient at higher mana costs. So like paying 3 mana feels bad in regular Infect, but in black-green Infect, when you get a Phyrexian Crusader, who's immune to like almost all commonly played removal, it's great. However, you end up a little bit short because you're still paying a premium to do that. So the way that I was solving that problem was Phyto Burst, which is 2 mana for +5/+5 at sorcery speed, and that sort of like bridged the gap to get my like turn 2, turn 3 kills. This completely blows that out of the water.
Yeah.
And so I think the runner up, mid-range quote unquote Infect in black green is probably the bigger beneficiary of this over the big like umbrella of the archetype.
That's interesting.
Because Phyrexian Crusader is a really good card.
Yes. Yeah, that is always the reason to play the black in that deck.
But so that was my sort of my selfish take, if you will, is that like this is just better than Phyto Burst. And people gave me a hard time about playing Phyto Burst because they're like, oh, it's 2 mana, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but like five being more than 4 is super real.
Okay.
And 6 being more than 4 is even realer.
Yeah.
All right, let me just make sure I'm not a complete idiot. No,
Yep.
I'm not. Woohoo!
Yes.
It's protection from red and white.
Yes.
Now,
Mirror
for some
Crusader
reason,
is the black and green one.
yeah, I was like, wow, if he's protection from green, and sure, I'm gonna sound like a big jerk.
Yep. Next deck.
Good.
I'm going to talk about blue-white control. I think move this other deck down to the newcomers. It's somewhere in between a deck that existed and a new deck.
Yeah, agreed.
So blue-white control is getting a free counterspell, and I'm already playing free counters with Disrupting Shoal. And Force Negation is just easier to manage. All the things I wanted Disrupting Shoal for the most part are things I can Force Negation, aside from maybe a Tarmogoyf. But even then, I'd rather just not have the free counterspell in those matchups because it costs a card. It's like the classic Sideboard Out Force Will and Grinding Mirrors. The card that I believe you brought up was the new Time Twister variant. It is Echo of Aeons, and it's 4 blue. Each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into the library and draws 7, and has flashback of 2 in blue. My thoughts on that are that I'd rather have the more consistently fast Days Undoing. You brought up the point about like doing something with your mana after, but I don't think blue-white wants to jump through the hoop of putting that card in their graveyard. I think they're happy to just go up 7 cards to 1 and call it a day.
Yeah, that was when I was sort of talking through it in our conversation earlier. I was like, does this matter? Kind of, but if you have a 6 card advantage and most of your deck is instants anyways, ending the turn is not really a big deal.
Yeah.
So, and like with Puzzle Box too, I mean, there's just like Narsa is such a problem.
Yes, problem is how I would describe that card.
Like Narsa and Teferi are a huge problem. The fact that they share color is a problem. The fact that they also share colors with like
you didn't expect all the best cards to be blue? What?
Right. And here we are. So I mean, hey, look, if you shoot for the moon and you miss, you still land among the stars, as it were. So even if something happens to one of these cards, this deck is still going to be very, very, very good.
Yes. Okay. You should go ahead for this next one.
Sure. So Pox, and when I say Pox, I don't mean 8-rack. I mean like a more classic small Pox build, some closer to Legacy. We have Nether Shadow now, which we didn't previously. Nether Spirit.
Yes.
I just get those confused. We have Nether Spirit. Nether Shadow is the one from Alpha. So Nether Spirit is 1 black for a 2/2. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Nether Spirit is the only creature in your graveyard, you may return Nether Spirit to the battlefield. The trick to this is you just only play 1. And you don't play any other creatures. So if it's in your graveyard, it's always coming back. Fantastic. Just like value. We have multiple new edicts. Like they actually just straight up reprinted Diabolic Edict in Pox builds. Like you're going to be playing Liliana anyways, so you're going to play Liliana's Triumph. If for some reason that changes, like she's real bad when Dredge is all over the place, you know, maybe you switch to Diabolic Edict, but at least it's there.
Diabolic Edict targets and Liliana's Triumph doesn't, which I know comes up against the Bogles matchup because they have Leyline.
Sure. Yep. No, that is valid. I keep calling it like, I have a lot of names for it, but I can't remember its actual name. Mind Rake.
Yes.
So this is a new Mind Rot. It's like Delirium Skeins and Mind Rot had a baby, and so its regular cost is 2 and a black for sorcery. Target player discards 2 cards, which is just Mind Rot, which is not a modern playable rate for that effect. The modern playable rate for that effect is 2 mana, which is Wrench Mind, but Wrench Mind has a very significant and especially recently a very common downside, which is it's 2 mana to discard 2 cards, black, discard 2 cards, but instead they can opt to discard just a single artifact, which makes it awful and like completely unplayable. I have long had a complicated relationship with that card because when it is good on curve, it's utterly backbreaking. When it is bad on curve or late, it is like I would play Distress over that, like just some completely unplayable card instead. Because if I'm only going to get one card, I want to get their best card, not their worst card.
Yeah.
So this Mindrake sort of addresses that issue to a certain extent, where you can pay. It has overload, but it's sort of flipped on its head. Normally, the overload costs are higher, and they have the overload reminder text is, you may cast the spell for its overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. So in this instance, the overload cost is 1 and a black instead of 2 and a black, and each player discards 2 cards. Obviously, minimizing or breaking synergy with black cards is what this deck does, right? Like, that's the whole point of Smallpox, is you don't play any creatures, or you play one creature that always comes back. So that portion of Smallpox is already slanted against your opponent. And then you play Dakmor Salvage, or you play, once you get past 3 lands, like, you don't care. So you can just, you can operate on a very low land count by design. So, like, pitching those extra cards, it just doesn't matter. On curve, overload, this is probably worse without some deck building considerations. Like, if I was gonna run this as, like, Wrenchmind right now, and most of the rack decks is like a 2 or 3 of. If I was going to go that hard with it, I would probably take out the Nether Spirit and run Bloodghast instead.
Okay.
Because that's, like, very painless to just go, like, not only painless, but also advantageous to just on turn 2, like, dump 2 Bloodghasts, or like a Bloodghast and Raven's Crime. Because that's really the ideal, and that's often what you'll do with a Smallpox. So with a little bit of tweaking, I think you can get to a place where playing this as your main, like, 2-for-1 in the 2 mana on curve slot is at least tenable and probably advantageous. I don't think you can just take an existing deck and just put this right into it.
Okay.
Like, I wouldn't. It demands more, but the reward, I think, is there.
So that was the part that was interesting to me, is that clearly, like, if people play Delirium Skeins before, this card is similarly interesting. I was just kind of wondering what the hoops you had to jump through to make it actually good were.
There have been plenty of points in the past where, like, playing some number of Bloodghast was the norm, or was at least, like, common. There's certainly lists that have propped up more recently. The number of actual, like, rack effects has been sort of steadily declining from 8 down to 7. Some of the more recent lists have even gone down to 5. And part of that is Davriel, because he does both for 3 mana, and also, like, doesn't die to, like, Ratchet Bomb on 1, because that was a real issue for the deck.
Yeah. EE for 1, all the threats die, and then, 10 turns later you do.
So it's so that the archetype is definitely evolving, and like I said, I would look more at the older style, like legacy rack pox, or just straight up legacy pox, instead of trying to, like, muscle a lot of the new cards into a traditional stock modern 8 rack list.
Okay. Yeah. Next deck on the list is Blue Moon.
Yep. This is all you, sir.
Yeah, so this set, I think the big one from this set was Archmage's Charm. That's blue, blue, blue. Counter target spell, or draw 2 cards, or gain control of target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 1 or less, which gives this deck an answer to specific enchantments or artifacts it might have kind of missed a main deck answer to, but it's also just a counter spell and a card draw spell all in the same package, so it's nothing you wouldn't want to, like. So I guess I should preface this with, we said this about Is It Charm. Is It Charm's embarrassing, but this card actually puts you up cards. It's not just a guaranteed downside like Is It Charm is, where it's like, well, I'm paying 2 mana to deal 2 damage, and that's not a great rate. It's like, well, this always trades for a card, a counter spell, or draws 2. Like, those are just better things. Like, people are just literally playing Hieroglyphic Illumination. And, like, I understand that as a cycling, but like, people are casting that magic card, which should tell you something about the format. This is kind of just layering on other big gains this deck got from War of the Spark. So Narset, and one of the things that was brought up in the Patreon was the Jace Leveler combo. So Jace Wielder of Mysteries, which is the Jace 1 blue, blue, blue. If you would draw a card from an empty library, instead you win the game. And then you can plus it to Thought Scour and -7 it to draw 7. And then if you have an empty library, you win the game. That plus Leveler, 5 mana, artifact creature, 10/10. When it enters the battlefield, exile your library is an instant kill. So that was brought up for this deck. I think that if you're going for a combo in this deck, this is definitely the best shell for it. Like, Jace is definitely better than Lab Maniac, because Lab Maniac is vulnerable to Fatal Push and all those things, and Jace is just like a very good card on its own. Well, very good might be pushing it, but it's going to be drawing you extra cards on its own. It's very good relative to a Grey Ogre, if you don't have the Leveler combo. But I think that if I want to combo in this deck, I want the more aggressive, like, Narset plus Days Undoing combo, which I think I would want something of that aspect. I think it's the right direction to take this deck, is some kind of additional 2-card combo on top of Blood Moon, just making your deck more of a control deck with free wins, the way that blue-white is kind of shifting as well.
Yeah, there's the sort of bigger picture of sort of blue-red X sort of combo control is you have a ton of options right now. So you can go like old school through the Breach, right? Like, Breach Emrakul still wins games.
Yep.
It just does. There's Jace Leveler. There is, I mean, just straight up like Thing in the Ice. Same thing, right? Like, Thing in the Ice wins games. Just having the Narset Days Undoing as just gravy. Like, it is 0 deck building cost, right? You don't have to make any changes to the mana. You literally just put the card in your deck. It immediately disadvantages your opponent, and you get a dig through time over 2 turns. And then also you can all just randomly cast a Power 9 spell.
Yep. And Narset finds the other half of the combo. That's the part that's so absurd to me.
And then you'll get your free Blood Moon wins. Like, that definitely happens. So I would pick your favorite 2, maybe 3, and put them all in the deck, and, you know, pick something that suits your playstyle, pick something that you have the cards for. And, you know, I think even, like, heck, you could, like, Through the Breach Leveler with Jason play still works. Like, that is still a thing that can happen. And you can very definitely, like, in a pinch, you know, like, if you don't have an Emrakul, sure, like, I will also win. I will win the game this way. It still has that text. And also, your opponent is not legally allowed to be mad at you if you win the game that way. So, like, if you win on a through the breach leveler, they're required to shake your hand and congratulate you. And then the picture part is optional, but I would take a picture with them. So you're like, I got.
They don't sign the card?
Don't try and... that would be the best. Like, if you have an LGS or you live in an area where, like, the people are good enough sports that if you just, like... If you're the person that just plays like through the breach leveler and you just have everybody you beat with it sign the leveler, that would be ideal. I would frame that card someday.
Yeah,
because that's wild. But
yep.
Yeah. So just pick anything. There's so much stuff and there's so many good blue cards in the set. Like. And the power level of them is so high. I don't think you can go wrong. No. Like, even, dare I say, Jeskai, Super Friends, Jeskai Through the Breach, some combination. Because if you're going to play a combo deck, you might as well play 3 mana Teferi so that your opponent can't interact with it.
That's a good point.
I mean, there's no downside to playing that card, and all ridiculous upside. Also, like, just straight in a quote unquote fair sense, playing Narset with Vendilion Click is ridiculously good.
Yeah, Vendilion Click also pressures their Narset pretty well.
Yeah. Yes, there will come a point where you have to plan for the Narset Teferi mirror when it becomes popular enough. And
it already has, and I've cast way too many Snapcaster Mages as 2 mana 2/1s.
I don't even know what the mirror breaker there is. And if the answer is that the mirror breaker is sorcery speed Snapcaster for no value, I'm going to be really unhappy.
Oh no, you're supposed to instant speed it in response to the Teferi, and then it. Well, I don't think it's bound. It's like after the Narset activation. Sorry, I haven't had it against Teferi yet.
There we go.
That's wonky, okay. But yes. God. So next deck on the list, we said Slivers. I think the thing with Slivers is, like, yes, you get a 2-drop haste creature, but I think a lot of the edge of Slivers in the format was that it gave all of its creatures flying with Gale Rider Sliver, and at that point you're just building a Spirit deck without Spell Queller.
Yes, and the Spirit deck without Spell Queller is not worth playing.
Yep.
Signed, me.
Yep.
June 4th, 2019.
Exactly.
Like...
After Slivers comes a pet deck of mine, the various Electro Dominance Restore Balance decks. They got Crashing Footfalls, which is the replacement green suspend card for the banned Hypergenesis. It has no mana cost, it suspends 4 for a single green mana, and it makes 2 4/4s. I think that's just like an easy way to win the game. You just can have that card in your deck, and then you Electro Dominance, and then you cast it, and then you just have 2 4/4s and they die. It's not a lot of work, just having a really easy pseudo combo aspect to the deck is really nice. Also, I think that the suspend 4 on that card is kind of egregiously low. Like, I want to put things in context of Ancestral Vision is also suspend 4. So, like, would you rather draw 3 cards or have 2 4/4s? Like, it's kind of an imbalanced thing.
Yeah, I mean... Maybe they just felt bad that, like, Hypergenesis was so over the line. And they're like, it's still got to be really good.
Yeah, I don't know. And then the last deck we had up. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. What I was just going to say, one thing that I did want to bring up about the suspend rhinos is they do not get haste when they come off suspend.
That bugs me so much. You have no idea. The entire point of putting haste on suspend creatures was listed as the players expected it, and now the players expect it, and it's like, yeah, but no.
So that is a notable thing.
Yes. And the last deck, which we've mentioned repeatedly, is Devoted Druid, which, in addition to, we talked about Plague Engineer and Eldamri's Call as a tutor target and a tutor to add to that deck, Giver of Runes is really good. I've ranted about how Spellskite costs 2 mana and therefore trades poorly for all the 1 mana things in the format. Giver of Runes is like a Spellskite that costs 1 mana. If you just go Giver of Runes turn 1, Devoted Druid turn 2, I don't know what your opponent's supposed to do besides have 2 kill spells, and that's really rough.
Yeah.
I will say I think Noble Hierarch is kind of an overrated 1-drop in that deck. I think that I would like to see people... I mean, there are people doing that. There was like the Simeon Spirit Guide Chalice of the Void list that popped up for a bit. But I would like to see people try like a Giver of Runes, less mana dork version of that deck.
Yeah. No, I could see that. Despite its occasionally high win rate, I'm not advocating. I wouldn't advise someone to play the like super all-in version, like the post-mortem lunge. Like I get it, but I think over the long term, I think that's a worse version, because you also need to you will occasionally need to actually play Magic. Like someone will be able to force you to play Magic and you will lose, because there is nothing else to that deck, or like nothing else to that version of the deck. Whereas like in a like Abzan toolbox or green white toolbox, you can have this along with Eldamri's Call and, you know, all the sort of tutory stuff that you said, and then also just occasionally be like, oh, I win.
Exactly. Yep.
Man, so there's also like new stuff. There's just it's unbelievable how much stuff there is. So the new archetypes, I want to kind of breeze through this. I have tried to make the Astral, Astral Drift.
Yes.
I've tried to make the Astral Drift deck. It is a complete mess. I have no idea how that deck wins, because it's basically like a mopey, eerie interlude deck that just like involves more hoops. So it is cool. There are already like a ton of cards that do that same thing in Modern. So I don't know if a 3-mana permanent plus some other cost is going to get there, especially considering you also have to have something on the board for it to do something.
Exiling their creatures was part of what was going on, but I'm looking back at these Astral Slide decks from like, this is a list that Cedric Phillips again mentioned, because I know he played this deck about 10 years ago, played this. I have no idea how this deck would compete in the current Modern metagame. It's like, I have Kitchen Finks and I'm flickering it. It's like, that's great. You can't even play Kitchen Finks the first time. So I don't really foresee, unless the format comes to a point where it's like, yes, every single deck has a creature in it, and if you exile that creature for a turn, things get dicey, and if you keep exiling it, it gets dicier. I don't really see Astral Drift performing the way you want it to.
Yeah, and oh, okay. So there was, if they had also printed Lightning Rift, then like, I guess maybe that would be a different discussion, but they didn't.
No.
So
yeah, it's not.
I don't see it, and I want to see it. Like, let me be clear. I would love for that deck to exist because it's super cool. Does it somehow exist? I have no idea, and somebody's gonna have to make it for me, because I shot my shot and it did not land. So good luck to whomstever makes that deck work. drop me a line.
So the next new deck is Aristocrats. This is largely on the back of Carrion Feeder, which is black for a 1/1 zombie that can't block, and you can sacrifice a creature to put a +1/+1 counter on it. It's the best no cost required sacrifice effect that I think has ever been printed. But what notably separates this deck from the other, like, well, these are creatures and they do some creature reassembly nonsense, is that it has disruption that fits in the deck to back it the way humans does. So you could play Thalia in this deck too, but you could also play Tidehollow Sculler, and Tidehollow Sculler sacrifices in response. So it's one of the old worded cards with Sculler, so it triggers when it enters the battlefield, and it triggers when it leaves play. And if you sacrifice it in response to the enters the battlefield trigger, it leaves play, returns the card that hasn't been exiled to their hand, and then you take a card. So you can, if you have a Carrion Feeder and you play a Sculler, you can pay, white-black, take a card from their hand and put a counter on your Carrion Feeder. But then also you have an Undead Augur, let's say, which is black-black, 2/2, Zombie Wizard. Whenever a zombie you control dies, you lose a life and draw a card. So you could assemble all this stuff and draw a card and kind of build this weird, grindy engine thing that's all fairly cheap. So it does look like it's close to the modern level of play. And I'm just going to count on Sam Black to do this, because he's literally going to lock himself in a room and make it work.
Excellent. Take it away. Like I said, let me know, because I do love a good Aristocrats deck. This one, it is extra strange because it also includes like zombie synergies sort of like woven into it, and I just like I lost the threads. I was like, So Sam, if you're listening, save us.
He's already been working on it. I think the deck it's real beneath whatever's going on. I think its big question is how you balance the removal spells to not overload on them, but also have the right stuff to kill the Charming Wife or Death Shadow.
Okay.
I will let you take the next deck because you shared that like Snow.
I did. Okay, so I took a crack at the Snow deck, and I originally did it entirely on the back of the Glacial Revelation. And Glacial Revelation is the lead the Stampede for Snow cards. So it's like Mega Lead the Stampede. So it's 2 and a green for sorcery. Reveal the top 6 cards of your library. You may put any number of Snow permanent cards from among them into your hand and put the rest into your graveyard. So I went about building a blue-green Snow deck that contained all Snow everything. And what I ended up with is Boreal Druid, Icehide Golem, Icefang Coatl, Rime Tender, which folks may have missed in the reveal. It is a 2-mana 2/2 that is a snow creature, and you can tap it to untap another snow permanent, which conveniently plays into the Cold Snap Limited All-Star Phyrexian Ironfoot. It's a 3-mana 3/4 artifact creature that does not untap during your untap phase, and you can pay 1 and a snow to untap it. Or you can do the big brain play of untapping it with Rime Tender for free. And Abominable Treefolk, which is a 4-mana star for a snow creature, Treefolk, with trample. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of snow permanents you control, and as ETB, tap target creature an opponent controls, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. There are snow artifacts in the set, Arkham's Astrolabe, and then like the aforementioned Glacial Revelation, and a bunch of snowlands, and the payoff, big quotation marks around payoff, Merit Lage's Slumber, which is 1 and a blue for a legendary snow enchantment. And whenever Merit Lage's Slumber, or another snow permanent enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. So in this deck, functionally, search for Azcanta, like, kind of. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more snow permanents, sacrifice Merit Lage's Slumber. If you do, create Merit Lage, a legendary 2020 black avatar creature token with flying and indestructible. So the thing is, getting to 10 snow permanents in this exact deck is ridiculously easy. Very consistent turn 4, just like get everything out there. The hitch is that if this is your main payoff, people are already pretty ready to kill Search for Azcanta, and this is just like a worse Search for Azcanta. And then the payoff, like once you have the 2020, you have a lot of the Merit Lage problems that are in Legacy, which is it flies, which is good, but it doesn't have trample, which is bad. So there's a bunch of new edicts. Path to Exile exists.
Teferi.
Teferi. Like this is one of those rare instances where like you actually want Path instead of Swords to Plowshares, because you don't want your opponent to gain 20 life, but you are happy to give them in this land, a snow basic, because they're all snow basics. And so I was successful in building the Glacial Revelation deck, which is, just there's only 8 cards, of which Glacial Revelation are 4 out of the 8 that are not snow permanents, that are not hits off of Glacial Revelation, and the other 4 are Prismatic Vistas, which are just kind of there, and if you really wanted to like go down the rabbit hole, they're not really, strictly speaking, necessary. So you could make it where 56 of the cards are hits for Glacial Revelation, and just like literally live the green card advantage dream, because that's where we live now. Of a 3-mana draw, a reliable 3-mana draw 6 with no downside.
So there's a lot of cards in that deck that I'm not interested in playing, but what interests me is that if you hit like 40 to 50 cards in your deck, Glacial Revelation is a 3-mana draw 3 to 4 cards, and it's kind of like out of the reasonable power range of the format. I don't know what you're doing with those cards, but it's interesting that you can do that.
Yeah, you're casting like 1-mana 2/2s, 1-mana 2/2 artifact creatures that you can only cast with snow mana.
But you get to draw a lot of them.
You draw a ton of them. Your Icefang Coatls are actually like totally insane, because they're pretty much always going to have Death Touch, plus you draw a card, flash, flying, like the whole shebang-a-bang.
Yeah. The last time they printed one of these cards in Journeys to Nyx, it was Crufix's Insight, and it couldn't hit lands, so you couldn't get to these high numbers where it was reliable. And I think that it's interesting that now you can.
Yeah. Am I going to fire this up on Magic Online and play it a couple times? Absolutely. Yes, I will. Thanks to our friends at Card Hoarder. I will do that. I may even stream it, depending on how embarrassing it is. But there are a couple of other like borderline defensible snow creatures. Like Phyrexian Soulgorger is probably the big one.
Ooh,
that could, like, Phyrexian Soulgorger is a 3-mana 8/8 that has cumulative upkeep, sacrifice a creature. But it's an 8/8, and it does count as a snow creature. So what's that?
Interesting. That's not a card I've thought about in a long time.
Likely you and everyone else on planet Earth. There is also a Juggernaut. There's a 6 mana 6/5 for a snow artifact creature Juggernaut that also has fire breathing for some reason, but you have to pay 1 and a snow mana to activate it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to not thinking about that because it costs 6 mana, but
yeah. But look, we're ramping with Boreal Druid, modern staple Boreal Druid. Once a Bant Eldrazi All-Star. I found this too. Rhymewind Cryomancer, 3 in blue, 2/3 human wizard, not a snow human, lame. Has a 1 tap for a stifle. So like that was interesting. I was like, all right. And you can only activate it if you control 4 or more snow.
Oh, that'll just happen. That costs 4 mana. You have to. You're just.
Guess what? Joke's on you, sucker. If I've got 4 mana, I have 4 snow permanents.
Huh.
Boom.
Okay.
Once again, is it good? Probably not. Like, you can't beat a combo deck.
We might be a snow set away from this. Just one more. We got one, and we got another. We just need the full snow block to pull it together.
We already had the full snow block. It still doesn't work.
No, you just had one set. It was just Cold Snap.
Okay, sure. Honestly, even if you expanded the card set to like everything that has a snow keyword, I still don't think it works.
You might need snow instants and sorceries.
If they ever print a snow instant, I will lose my mind.
It means as much as a snow anything else, so I don't know what the difference is.
I guess it's just
yeah.
I mean, hey, we now have a creature that has snow mana in its casting cost, which is a first,
and not a creature,
right? So that's, I guess, the world is our oyster. In that it must stay on ice lest it poison and kill us. The land, I'm going to sort of like lump all this stuff together. So the land matters, sort of macro archetype got like 45 cards in this set.
Yes.
It's unbelievable how much of that stuff, and I am still sifting through it, and I play a lot of those decks, like Lone Pox, Death Cloud, Seismic Assault, various versions of Seismic Assault, like
Seismic Bear
combo
Assault.
Seismic Bear Assault, and I'm still like scrutinizing a lot of the stuff because it is either like on its face ridiculous, and I'm like trying to figure out why it's secretly terrible, or it looks terrible and I'm like still have that little inkling that perhaps there's something that I'm missing that makes it ridiculous.
Can we agree that the biggest ad is the cycling lands, because all of these decks have to go through Life from the Loam basically, and those just turn that card into a real card.
Yeah, the Onslaught cycling lands, something that, you know, I had been pushing for to be in Modern and even in Standard. I mean, like, let's be serious. It's not like they're going to break anything in Standard. But we just had a cycling land set, so it was... I understand. I'm glad they're here now. The roundabout way in which they got here is unimportant. I totally lost my train of thought. Land matters. Bears. Oh. So the one that I keep coming back to is there's a dragon.
Oh, from this set? That costs one less for each land in your graveyard. So you can make it cost red effectively. And it's 4/4 flying haste, right? So it's volcanic dragon stats. It's like,
so like I'm sitting here and I'm like, is this secretly terrible? Because it seems great.
Or Scale Guardian.
Or Scale Guardian. 5 red, 4 mana flying haste, costs 1 less for each land card in your graveyard.
So how are you getting this many lands in your graveyard this fast that you aren't just dredge? Yes, fetches. That's 1 a turn. That's actually easier than I think it is. Wow.
Yeah, so like you can do this. You could cast this on turn 3, pretty easily. Yeah. Like with like a single, or no, you can't use mulch because it forces you to draw the lands. But there are a number of other things that like dump 4 cards into your graveyard. So if you're playing 26 lands, like you can get this much of the time. You know, and even so, like, right, you don't have to cast this on turn 3. You can very easily just like play block and tackle for a couple of turns, play a seismic assault, have them be like, deal with the seismic assault or lose, and then they deal with it, and you go, okay, untap, I have 4 red, deal with 2/4/4 haste or lose.
Yeah.
And like then you just keep putting that stuff out there. At like I said, if you're already supporting triple red, then supporting double red is nothing. So as far as I can tell, there's very little, if any, deck building overhead involved in having this, and I would definitely play a 2 mana 4/4 flying haste.
Yeah, no, that card looks like it actually might hit. Another one of the buried gems of the set that there's 8 million of.
Yeah, and that's the other. I mean, so there's a lot of stuff in red green. And a lot of it uncommon, like Ruination Rioter, red green 2/2 human berserker. When it dies, you may have it deal damage to any target equal to the number of land cards in your graveyard.
Yeah.
So like you just machine gun your opponent with seismic assault and then use the last seismic assault trigger to kill this guy and then just dome them for the rest. Seems fine.
Yeah, that maths out pretty well.
I mean, it's just like, and it's the same thing, right? Like I look at it and I'm like, there has to be something I'm missing that makes this not good. And I keep looking, and there's only so much text on the card, and I yet to find it, and it's like, it's weirding me out because I have been trying to make that deck happen for a long time.
That card is really exciting.
Yeah. Like Tectonic Reformation, 1 red enchantment. Each land card in your hand has cycling red, and then the enchantment itself has cycling 2. Ridiculous. This
one I'm skeptical of, but I guess cycling 1 mana though?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't like going down a card, but that's so efficient to churn through a bunch of cycling with life on the loan.
Yeah. I just, and then like Wrenn and 6, which we've already talked about, is ridiculous. Winding Way is ridiculous. Like, there's just there's so much, and I'm just like waiting for the other shoe to drop where they're like, oh, the next set has like a 1 mana, can't activate anything that has the word lands.
No, they just got Death Wish on again. Don't worry about it.
Wake up. This is a nightmare. I can't.
Speaking of decks that can never beat Deathrite Shaman, we had Threshold on this list, to which I believe the question I responded with was, I think we're both wondering it is Nimble Mongoose a card you can play in 2019? I think that based on Legacy, the answer might just be no. Like paying 1 mana for a 3/3 Shroud, or you can pay 1 mana for a 5/5 or a 11/11 or whatever Death Shadow is. I'm kind of skeptical it's the most efficient creature you can play.
I want the answer to be yes. I don't think it is yes. And further, I have also like played the like strictly worse Nimble Mongoose that was already in modern Scythe Tiger. And even at 3 power, it still didn't get there. So I'm trying to figure out if like Domri Anarch of Bolas sort of like fits in there somewhere where you then have Nimble Mongoose as like a 4/3 that can't be countered with Shroud.
But you
like
can't fight with it because it's actually shrouded. It's not hexproof.
No, I know, but it's just getting the passive +1 from Domri and being able to cast it uncounterably off of him.
Okay.
Is like, it's closer where I'm like, okay, like a 4/3 uncounterable Shroud for 1 mana is a card that I think is playable.
Seems like it's a little too... You're not asking quite enough from your Planeswalker, so I'm still skeptical.
Yeah, I don't know. The answer is, realistically, the answer is probably no. Am I going to try it anyways? Yes. Of course.
That seems to be the theme of the set. There's so many cards that like you can just try anyways and see what happens.
Yep. I mean, hell, they gave us green, discard a card, make a bear token. Is Seismic Assault for bears.
Yep.
So, and like the worst part is that card is insanely good.
Yeah, that card is a very good rate.
Like, you know, it is comparable, you know, in appearance to Seismic Assault, where like you're exchanging a card for 2 damage potential.
But if you don't have all 10 lands up front, this is going to deal more damage.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like it's still instant speed. It's like there was a time when people, probably maybe just me, tried to play like fair zombie infestation, like just play it as a value card. And this is way better than that because it's only one, you only discard 1 card instead of 2. And like, even though bear is not a relevant creature type unless you're going like hella deep, and I sorry, I had this bizarre, I was like, oh man, I finally found a deck for Murganda Petroglyphs. And so there you go. Listening audience, you can take that one for free. Do you remember that card?
Murganda. Oh, yes. Creatures with no abilities get +2/+2. That is a card.
You'd be flinging out 4/4 bears for the trim cost of 7 mana across 2 cards, and then also discarding land cards. I forgot that it cost 4. In my head, for some reason, it cost 3, and I was like, that's borderline playable at 3 mana. I don't think it's playable at 4 mana, but sure is interesting.
Okay, what about this bank control deck you brought up? Because I'm interested in... I want to know what bank cards have you interested from this set.
Okay. Bank control has been on the sort of like fringes for a long time. It is one of the less popular like blue-white X or even like blue-green X combinations. This set, it looks like they really tried to give blue-green more like zhuzh. The color combination got a huge shot in the arm of Planeswalkers from War of the Spark that people have not fully explored yet. Like, people stopped at Teferi Time Raveler and Narset, and like Ashiok even to a lesser degree. The new Tamiyo is ridiculous. It is a very, very good card, and people are not playing it. Notably, it also pitches to Force of Negation. Throwing that out there.
That's the point that we're at with this format. We now have the pitches to Force of Negation test.
Yeah. No, but it's, these decks traditionally have suffered from sort of lack of off-turn defense, because you do want to still be casting creatures, right? Like, you want to be casting Tarmogoyfs, you want to be casting, Knight of the Reliquary. Like, those are the kinds of threats, or I mean, even Geist of St. Traft on curve, right? You want to be doing that, and that usually does not lend itself to also holding up counter magic, like a traditional blue-white deck. Adding the green just gives you a lot of options. So you could do Bant Super Friends, which would be great. You could do Retreat to Coral Helm now with like Eldomri's Call, and the other card that we were talking about.
Which one? Which one of these 290 cards?
The other one for creature decks. The other one for like creature toolbox decks. Maybe it was just Eldomri's Call, and I'm like,
I think we talked about Eldomri's Call twice. That might have been it. Giver of Runes also might have been what it was with Knight of the Reliquary.
Sure. Yep. Giver of Runes is an amazingly good, like, enabler for the Retreat to Coral Helm combo.
So the interesting part to me is that you're describing a lot of stuff that it sounds like it's just playing catch up with the last set, which is really interesting that this was dropped so soon after such an impactful set that, like, we're just going to see a lot of things just waiting to happen.
Yep. You now have a full 8 Horizon Canopies if you want to run them.
A card that you
Waterlogged Grove.
scrolled by that I've completely forgotten to mention that is also good in these kind of decks is Winds of Abandon. This is 1 and a white, sorcery speed, Path to Exile, but it has Overload for 4 white, and it only targets their stuff. So it's just 2 mana sorcery speed, path one of their things, or Plague Wind. Like, that, if you're Knight of the Reliquary, having access to that dual purpose effect, if you can mana dump into it, is really absurd.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that this set is really the critical mass point for a lot of those effects that were like, or a lot of those things that were just sort of like just waiting in the wings. And like, now you have that, like a white Plague Wind. Now you have enough of a controlling backbone of planeswalkers or other sort of like miscellaneous permanents. You have a free counter spell that now you can really just like the world is your oyster in that color combination. And also like Noble Hierarch allows you to do all that stuff faster than a blue-white opponent. So in a control mirror scenario, you're sort of putting them in a really awkward position where they either have to like path your Noble Hierarch, which is the worst feeling in the world. Or
that just doesn't do what you want it to do.
Right. Or they're always going to be on the back foot. And so I think that as the evolution of sort of controlling archetypes, where if the new level 0 is blue-white Super Friends control, that like maybe the level up from that is Bant, where you're like, I'm doing it faster, I'm closing the game out, but I'm also maintaining, stack interaction, maintaining, taking advantage of toolbox, where like, hey, if I just need to go get a Phyrexian Revoker in response to your Teferi, I'll just do that.
Yeah,
That sounds like it makes sense that you'd want to, like, the Noble Hierarch plus Planeswalker side of things is something I hadn't really thought about for Modern, and that's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's better than turn 3 Teferi, turn 2 Teferi. Like, so there's just, and you know, obviously the mana isn't an issue, and there's so much. So I really think that archetype bears exploration. I mean, hell, play Spell Queller. Like, Spell Queller with Teferi is obnoxious. Sweet, you killed my Spell Queller. You don't get your spell back.
Yep. That's, wow. Yep, add that one to the list of things that I have learned about Teferi today.
Yeah. Like, it just, it's a lot of layers. And that's like, that is just the, like, kind of relatively off the cuff, like off the top of my head kind of stuff. There's variations and, you know, optimizations that are much deeper than this that I haven't even, like, thought about yet.
Oh. Okay.
I guess the advice there is, if you don't already own Noble Hierarchs, maybe now is the time to get them.
Yeah, now or 12 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
But
actually, maybe now.
If we don't,
I take that back.
Have a time. Yeah, if we don't have a time machine, which we don't.
The card was just an Ultimate Masters. I missed that part of it. Yes, now is the time.
Yeah. That was actually when I picked them up. I'd gotten a set the last time they get reprinted, and then they spiked up to like $80, and I sold them, and then waited around for another reprint, and then when the last reprint came, I bought them again, and I'm just like hanging on. But yeah, if you're thinking in that direction, I would grab them in relatively short order.
I'm now looking through the entire list of every card in Ultimate Masters to figure out which ones I don't own.
All right, so that mammoth episode brings us to the I'm gonna, like, the close, but not even close, to the sort of stuff that's happening in Modern Horizons. So before we get to the Spice Rack, you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Turn1Thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at T1Thoughtseize. Ari is at ARMLX. You can watch a stream at twitch.tv/T1Thoughtseize, sponsored by our friends at Card Order. You can see our YouTube videos at youtube.com/Turn1Thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can read my columns at blog.cardkingdom.com. You can read Ari's columns at starcitygames.com. You can become a member of the Thoughtseize Cabal at patreon.com/Turn1Thoughtseize, all spelled out. And of course, you can see all of our content on turn1thoughtseize.com. The Spice Rack card for this week is my new favorite card, Winding Way.
Yeah.
I was already playing Mulch, and this is just better. Winding Way is 1 and a green for a sorcery. Choose creature or land. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all cards of the chosen type revealed this way into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Where do I even start? Since green is the traditional card advantage color of Magic, we have a potential 2-mana draw 4, which is what you would expect out of the color green. So a lot of these effects notably don't put the cards into your graveyard, which makes them less useful in a lot of situations. This sort of hits all the notes, right? Like, Mulch only hits lands. It's the same cost. There is the equivalent of this for creatures is Lead the Stampede at 3 mana. So to have both of those cards together on a single card for 2 mana is just bonkers. Like, unbelievably powerful, super fantastic, just like an unassuming, like, dirt common that has insane potential with almost no like deck building requirements, like play lands and creatures. This will help you find them.
Yeah, it's the fact that this card does so much for, like, the problem with Mulch is that it's not actually a spell. The problem with Lead the Stampede is that sometimes you miss lands, and this card's just like, well, you know, you just get whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing Abundance in Assault Loam for a little bit, just because I wanted to be able to, so let me rephrase that. Abundance is a weird old card. It's 2 green for an enchantment. I believe it was also a Spice Rack card, and it has similar text to this where you choose land or creature, and then you reveal cards off the top until you hit one of those and put it in your hand. Abundance has a bunch of other weird interactions because it's a replacement effect for your draw, blah, 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 blah. This is half the cost, much more straightforward, and it dumps the stuff into your graveyard for delve and whatnot. It's just, I cannot say enough good things about this card. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I have a feeling this is one of those weird enablers that's just going to keep coming back over time, over and over.
That, as they say, is that. Thank you so much, everybody who is listening. Please tell a friend. Thanks for sticking around with us for this monumental occasion. And we will catch up with you next time.